I received an email from someone asking me, what do the numbers and dashes mean on the circle template board by Quilt Creations? The dashes are just really a visual clue to tell you that these circles are the same here, because otherwise they can kind of look somewhat similar, so I'm guessing that they don't want you to get mixed up. The numbers are not a unit of measure. They are just to help you realize that 0 here is the same as the 0 here. This 1 is for all these ones. This 2 is for all these ones. That kind of thing. They don't represent a unit of measure, a circumference, or anything like that. When you go on Amazon, look at the 4th photo. There's an image of their packaging, and there you'll see measurements of the strip that they suggest to use for those circles. Most of the circles have 6 of the same size, and that would be great if you're making snowflakes. And then the circles for size 0, there's only 2. I assume it's because that was all that was left on this side after making all these holes. It's kind of nice to be able to make your circles here, and then you have a work surface here. And if you flip it over, there's actually a whole other large surface that you can use as your cork board here. One thing I noticed when I was working with this template is, do you see the depth of this plastic? It's kind of shallow, and I just found that when I would be working on certain parts and I just kind of touched it a certain way, somehow the way I touched it, it would just kind of hop right out of the template. This is a teardrop that I made from this number 5 circle, and this teardrop I made from a number 6 circle. And the difference between them is quite nice. It's a nice jump. But do you notice the circle difference between this number 1 and this 0? I find that to be a larger jump. I basically found myself wishing I had more incremental sizes in between all the holes. This is a circle template that I got at a dollar store, and the dashes here don't really mean anything for quilling. It was meant for someone drawing circles on some other drawing, so these are just really meant to show you the middle of the circle. The dollar store template I bought is from Canada, so the numbers here represent the circumference in millimeter. While I was at the dollar store, I also found these adhesive foam squares, and they were perfect to add to the underside of my circle templates. It raises my template a little higher, so it ends up corralling my strips and helps them from springing out. Another thing is, even though I am raising this surface off the desk, there is a little bit of give. So I'm exaggerating here. I would never press this hard, but just so you are aware that when I do put the foam pads underneath, it does give a bit of spring to the board. Now, of course, the dollar store template has many circles and small increments in between, which is great, but actually also kind of cumbersome because I didn't need it to go this small, and I really didn't need the jump between the 10 and the 11 to be a 10.5. Did you really notice the difference between these two sizes? Not really. So it was almost good that it had so many, but also bad that it had so many increments. The dollar store template also did not come with any measurement guide, so anytime I needed to put any quilled coils in here, I had to guess at the length that needed to go in them. And of course, since there aren't multiples of the same size circle, you couldn't just make a whole bunch at the same time in one area. I had to make one, take it out, make one, take it out, which is, not that bad. It's not like I was a machine and making it so fast, so it really honestly didn't bother me. Whenever I start coiling a strip, I tend to let the top part of that coil rest against this finger here to give it a smooth base. With my thumb, I'm guiding this strip against this coil here to try to give it as much even pressure as I can. I'm going to push the coil off my tool. I'm not going to pull it off. If you pull it off, you're going to create a tornado. So I'm going to release it into the board. Now that our coil has sprung out and filled the circle, it's time to glue the end down. I'm going to use a pair of tweezers and pick it up out of the template. I don't tend to use my fingers because my fingers can be too big and clumsy compared to tweezers. With tweezers, when I pick it up, I make sure that I don't let go until these fingers have clamped down on either side of the coil to make sure that it doesn't come undone. And then I just flick that tail up and add a little tiny dab of glue and just kind of push that down into place. Circle templates are useful if you're looking to make eccentric coils or off-center coils. You would basically take a pin and stick it into the innermost coil and push it off to one side. And then you could just pin it there, come with your glue, and you don't have to use a fine tip bottle like this. You can just use a toothpick if you need, or just pick it up with your needle tool and brush it across those rings. And this is when it's helpful that we're using things with plastic and things with metal where you can take the glue off. Now that the glue has dried, I'm going to lay a finger across those coils and pull the pin up in case any of the glue got stuck to the pin and we don't want to destroy those coils. Now I'm ready to pull that out of the circle template and we can see the eccentric coil. And the side that you have the glue on, that's the side I would glue down to your work surface so that you have the prettier side facing up. Now, if you were going to use this to make a teardrop shape, I happen to have some good tension on this particular one, but sometimes if you don't, you might want to just adjust your coils until they are more evenly spaced. Now, do you see this is where the end is, where I've glued it down, and with my needle tool I'm going to push the coil, the inside coil, to the opposite end. And I'm just going to see if all these coils are about evenly spaced before I pinch along that seam. So I want to minimize the look of that as much as I can. And that's how you form the teardrop shape. And sometimes if you pinch, and let's just say, do you see this tail end? If it sticks out a bit too much, you can feel free to grab a pair of scissors and just trim off that end just to make it nice and tidy. If you're a beginner quiller and your tension isn't even, you notice that the disc is uneven, I just find that if you use your fingers and just pinch the disc to flatten it out to make sure that there's any of those ridges of paper that are uneven, you can make it all better just by flattening it with your fingers. And I also find that just holding onto your coil just a little second before you place it into the circle template, it'll help make the shape just be a bit more consistent. Here's an example of a coil that was made with too much tension. You can see that the coils are quite tight and it doesn't fill the circle template fully. Here's an example where the coil was done too loosely. The outermost coils are doubled up, quite thick, and the gaps in between are quite wide. Now, all is not lost. You can actually recover from these two coils if you find that that's the result that you're getting. I would just simply unravel this one, and you can choose to ravel it again with your tool using a different kind of tension, but actually I just find that doing it by hand is also just fine. You can actually control the tension that you want with your hands just as well. So there's an example of how that we've opened that up almost a bit too much. You can see how these outside coils are doubled up. So let's just give that another go. And knowing your tension just honestly just comes with practice, just comes with playing with the paper more, and your fingers will start to know what you want them to do. There, that's a bit more even. So same with the loose coil. We can just unravel that Again, you can do it with your tool, you can do it with your fingers, not a big deal which way, either way. And you might need to play with it here and there, but eventually you'll get there. This is what happens if you let your coils sit. Even though this coil was looking like this yesterday, if you let it sit, look what happens. It'll continue to just gently unwind and it'll ruin your result of the even coils. So I would suggest that you form your shapes as soon as you can. The type of coil that you end up making also depends on what kind of tool you're using. So in this first case, I'm using the fine slotted tool here. The second one is using the slotted tool that came with my twirled paper book by Klutz. You can see the difference between these two circumferences here. And then the third one is made with the needle tool. And in all three cases, you can see that the rings are quite even. They're good tension, they fill the circle template fully, but depending on the tool that you're using, you do get a different look on the innermost coil. The type of paper that you're using to make your coils can also have an impact on the end result. Here, the blue sheet is the conventional type of paper used for quilling, and the one in green is made of Canson Mi-Tente paper. It's 160 GSM and I cut it myself for quilling. I usually use it for on edge or projects that are area kind of work. So here's a comparison between the two coils. It's the same length that I used for both, but you can see how the circles are a lot tighter here because of the thicker nature of the paper. But because the circumference is the same in the circle, when I do pinch them into a teardrop shape, we can get similar results. I just tend not to like this kind of result because I find it too thick. It's a little harder to manage. I would generally go up in a size to give the coils a bit more room. But every quiller has their own look, the kind of art that they want to create, so there's no hard, fast rules. Even though I normally pick this coil up and glue it and form my shape as soon as I can, what if this paper was made out of metallic paper? I find metallic paper doesn't glue as quickly as conventional paper. Whatever coating that they're using to make it metallic makes it a little bit less permeable for the glue. So let me show you something that I would do if I was doing a lot of metallic paper. Say you're using it for making snowflakes. I have a little bit of glue on a card and I'm just going to pick up a little bit of glue with my needle tool. And you can see on my needle tool, do you see how the glue is on one side and the other side is clear? There's no glue on that side, right? So I'm going to push the coils inward and swipe my glue up. And you know, I don't have tissue on me right now, but normally I would have. And you would clean off the tool and then just kind of push it against that outer coil to make sure that the paper is staying inside the template and yet it's staying corralled inside that shape and just kind of sitting there resting and making sure that, you know, the metallic paper has a chance to hold. As I've been showing you these two templates, I wonder if you happen to notice the fact that I hand wrote the measurement of the circumference next to the numbers. This one here, the guide is in millimeters and I wrote them in inches. And that's because sometimes when I'm designing a pattern, I want to remember the exact circumference in inches. I kind of go between both measurements really, but it kind of got me wondering, if you were to design your own template, your own ultimate circle template, what would you want it to be like? What would you want it to have? How could we straddle the best of the both worlds? The fact that this has multiples of the same size circle, and yet this one has more increments. Can you guys let me know in the comments below, if you were to design your own circle template, what would you want it to have? Let me know.